Hey everybody, again, welcome back to this series that we're doing. In this episode, we are going to finish off the last of the 4 requests we built into our server, and that is the update, the put request, and in my humble opinion, one of the more complicated logic-wise to handle in any application. So we're gonna take the time that we need to do this. There's a little bit of refactoring we got to do, but let's get a broad overview of what needs to happen. The route really depends, or the route really states that. The route needs two things. It needs the ID of the movie to delete, or to update, just like we did with delete. So we've got that. We understand a little bit how to do that now from the delete. But it also needs a request body. It needs a new object to update the existing object with. So it's actually updated in place. So a couple things we're going to have to do with this, but let's just get started and start fixing things along the way. So the effect that I would like to have for this is that we click an edit button here on each of these, and whichever one we click on, if we click edit here, this will toggle away from showing the display and instead toggle a form in its place that lets us type in what we'd like the title or genre to be. When we submit, it should flip back to show this view, but with the updated data and the database also being updated. So a couple things we've got to do here. All right, and I have added a teeny bit of CSS as we go forward. There's just this one class here for edit button, so if you'd like to copy that, grab it now. And let's move into this. So I'm going to throw an extra challenge into this. We need a form that the user can enter these new entries into. But we're going to do this the React way. We're not going to just create a new form because we already have a form that does this. It is a form that manages a title and a genre. So if we can put a little code handiwork into this, we can refactor it for so it's reusable. It can be used for adding movies. It could also be used for editing movies. So let's work on those refactors first, and then we'll implement them into our movie component. All right, so there's 3 things in this component we need to refactor. First and foremost, the inputs. If we're adding a new movie, we expect the inputs to be empty. But in this, when we're editing, I would like the inputs to have the text of whatever the current title and genre are displayed, and the user has to erase it to enter something else. Personal choice, you don't have to do it, but we're going to look at how to do it. So for my initial inputs here, I'm going to say the title and genre value should be props.title if it exists. If not, it should start as an empty string. And same with genre, props.genre or an empty string. And we'll pass these down and look at that then. Additionally, props.addMovie is a little bit specific, only for adding movies. So let's generalize this prop and call it something like submit, props.submit. And then lastly, the button text. We don't want it to say add movie if it's for editing, so we're going to say props.buttonText. So let's go change what we need to for the add movie form so that this still works for that, and then we'll continue on to the put request. So instead of, on our add movie form, instead of receiving a prop called add movie, it's going to receive a prop called submit, which we're still passing down add movie, so that should still work the same, but we're calling it something general. Likewise, we're going to give it a button text prop equal to add movie, so it still displays that on the add movie form. All right, and we're not passing down a title and a genre prop, so these ones will start off as empty inputs as we'd hoped. So we're going to come over here and make sure it still works. We'll say Aladdin, fantasy, add movie. All right, so everything's still working just fine. Now this refactor's allowed us to come into our movie component and implement this feature without having to build a whole nother form, because it can do the same thing. So let's import the add movie form template from add movie form. And for now, let's just display it right here below our delete button. And I'm going to space these out so it's better to read. Okay, add movie form. Got it. So now if we go back to our markup, we'll see that every single item has its own form. So there's still a little work we need to do, but this is a good start. Just like the delete button, everything has its own edit form. All right, so what props will the add movie form need? Well, it will need the title and genre, the existing title and genre that we added to the input. So we'll say title is the title for this movie, and the genre is the genre for this movie. And the button text will be something like submit edit. All right, let's go look at how those forms work. Nothing really tied together yet, but they should be showing up with the inputs in place. See how that's a nice effect, right? The title shows up, they have to come in here, delete it, and give you a new title, or delete it and give you a new genre. And now we can use that form, and it's displaying its own little submit button. All right, so that gets the form to show up, but we only want the form to show up if they click a button that says make the form show up. And when that happens, this needs to disappear. So how are we going to handle that is we're going to pull in use state from React. And we're going to create a little toggle. So I'm going to say here const edit toggle and set edit toggle is use state, and it starts off as false. Now I have a little toggler that I can use to display, dynamically render the actual movie data versus the add movie form. So I'm going to put some space in here because we're going to make a dynamic render. Here I'm going to open up object brackets. Here I will close. And what I want to render off of is I want to see if the edit toggle is off, then it should be showing just the regular display. But if the edit toggle is turned on, it should show the form for editing. Now we're getting a little syntax error here because if you recall in React, you can't return adjacent JSX elements without a wrapper. So an easy fix for this, so we don't create another div, is just to throw in a React fragment like so. If you don't recall, fragments are just invisible divs. Once this is actually in runtime in the browser, these are taken out, and this div will still be the parent. So it won't affect our styling at all. All right, well, we can come over here and now the form's disappeared, but we have no way to get to that form. So now we need the edit button that makes this toggle action happen. So let's build that in now. We will build two buttons, one here that says edit, and it will have a class name of edit button. And another button here that says close in case they decide to quit. And because this is two different elements, we also need to wrap this in a fragment. All right, so each of these buttons, all they need to do is flip the status of this toggle. So this button's on click. We'll use this anonymous function syntax again and simply say set edit toggle, give us the previous toggle, and set this to the opposite of what it was before. And this is going to be the same on click for the close to make the toggle close the edit window in case they decide to cancel the edit. Okay. I know that this has expanded quite a bit, but we've added two buttons just to make this toggle work, and we've created the state so we can dynamically view either the element itself, the movie itself, or the form for editing it. So let's see if this works. We'll come back, and it looks like, let's do a refresh. There we go. There's our edit button when I click on it. Ah, there we go. The form shows up if I say close. All right, and it goes right back. So that's nice. Each one has their own little edit toggle and can close on their own. So that's the first part of this, getting the ability to edit. And again, I'm choosing to do it this way. If you wanted to handle editing another way, have at it. This is just one way I wanted you all to see. Now that this form is implemented into our movie, we just need to give it the functionality it needs. If you recall, it still needs a submit prop to know what to do on submit. So for that, we're going to go up to our app component, and just like the other functions we built, we're going to build the edit function here. We will say function edit movie, and it's going to need two things. It's going to still need the movie ID of which one to update, but it's also going to need an updates object. So two arguments here. It's kind of a combination of these two functions. Then it will do an Axios.put. It'll send it to /movies / the movie ID. And it will send with it the updates object as a request body. Then the response will come back and we'll console log that as usual, or it will bring back an error. There's still a little bit we need to do, and maybe you've spotted it, maybe you didn't, but there is still a little bit of an issue. If you recall, for our add movie form, when we're adding a movie, our submit function, all it needs to send is the inputs. But when we're using this form for edit, it needs to send the inputs and an ID. So how do we account for that? Well, here in my edit movie function, I'm just going to switch these up. I'm going to put updates first and movie ID second, so it matches how that function's already working. It's going to pass an object as the first argument, and then we're going to let it pass a second argument if it exists. So the add movie form is going to pass up inputs, but it's also going to pass up props._ID, or the movie ID of which one to update. So our add movie form is going to need this received as a prop. So if I go to my movie component, and I have my add movie form here, I'll need to pass down the submit prop, and this needs to equal that edit function I have up here in my app. So edit movie is also going to be passed down to every movie as a prop. Recall the ID is already being passed down. So now in my movie component, I have a props.editMovie, and I would like that to be called when this form is submitted. So I will pass down props.editMovie to that component. And now this will get the submit function and pass up inputs and the ID. Now we still haven't passed the ID down for this form. So in movie, one more prop we're going to give this add movie form is _ID equals _ID, the ID that has come along for the ride for the specific movie. All right, so that was a lot. I know a lot of jumping around, so we will walk through the order of logic here in a moment. But let's see what's happening. Let's see how far we've gotten. We've done quite a bit of code here. So we'll scroll back. Let's change Die Hard to just something a little nicer, maybe Santa Claus. All right, and we'll hit Submit Edit. That is good. Good news there. We got a response back from our server, and it says the title is Santa Claus, the genre is action, and it still has the same ID. So it looks like everything was updated. If I close my edit form, it still says Die Hard, but that's because state wasn't updated. If I refresh the page myself, it is actually updated in the database. So still a couple things we got to fix, but we're getting close. So what we were seeing in the console log, the response.data is this right here. This is the updated version of the movie that has this ID. So we need to set state so we have that rendered to the DOM automatically. So I will open this up to a function and say set movies. Again, with previous movies, I would like to generate a new array. But this new array needs to have the same amount of items as the previous array, right? If there was 5 movies before, after you update one, there's still 5 movies. It's just one of the movie objects in this array has been updated. So we can't use filter. We don't want a smaller array, but what we can use is map, because map will check every item and let us change an item if we need to. So we're going to say previous movies.map. And for every movie, just return the regular movie in the array if its ID is not equal to the movie ID that we passed in. That means it wasn't updated, so just keep it. So if this evaluates to true, and we're going to have to do this as the ternary, if this evaluates to true, meaning we've encountered a movie that wasn't updated, just return the movie as is. But if that evaluates to false, meaning that we found the movie with this ID, let's return response.data in its place, which is the updated movie. I know, it's a little tricky there. But let's see if that works. We'll come back here and update Die Hard again. So let's edit Santa Claus and submit. There we go. If I refresh, it is also keeping it the same. Now, a happy side effect of what just happened is because the page re-rendered and had new data, our toggle automatically turned off and showed the new data. This was open. When I hit submit, it automatically closed. And that's just because new data came in and React re-rendered, and that state hook that we set to toggle the form got reset as well. This is roundabout one way that you could do an edit inside of a React program. I know that was a lot, as I stated before, so let's walk through the logic one more time. What we did first was add movie form got a little bit of an update. It is receiving a props.title and a props.genre and a props.id from whatever movie it's in regards to. If it receives it, it will set the title and the genre inputs to those values. So we see them here in the box, like so. Additionally, we updated the prop callback function from add movie to just plain submit. So we could do whatever we'd like. We could pass any function down and just refer to it as submit. And then we change it so it would also display button text as a prop as well. So now in app, when we're doing the add movie form, the submit function we gave it was add movie with the button text add movie. But in our movie component, where we're displaying the add movie form, we were able to pass down title, genre, and _ID, and then the button text of submit edit and the submit function of edit movie. Right? So using the same template, the same form, with new functionality provided via props. Additionally, we built a toggle inside of our movie component so that we could view either the movie data or the edit form depending on the value of a toggle boolean. And we gave two buttons, one to set it to true and false vice versa, so we could toggle this back and forth. Lastly, in our add movie form, we told it to expect the submit function to send both inputs and a props._id as its arguments. Now, when we're using the add movie form for actually adding a new movie, this won't be defined. This will be undefined, and that's fine because we're not using it anywhere. But when we're using it for edits, our edit function up here needs to receive updates and the movie ID. Unlike the post request that just needed the new object, we needed the new object and an ID. So we made place for that so that this function could receive it, do the put request, send along the updates, and when it came back, we said take all the previous movies, loop over them all. If you encounter a movie whose ID doesn't match the one that was updated, just keep that movie in place. Keep it where it is in the array. But if the movie ID does equal the ID that were updated, return the response data in its place. And this will give us the same size of an array as we had before, but it's going to swap out that old object for the new one. Now at the end of all this, we get this nice effect of being able to come in here, click edit, say something like Rabbit King, submit edit, and see that updated in our database. Even if I refresh just to prove again, that is still there. All right, so there are the 4 request types done in React to our own server using about 3 components and a little bit of React magic. But definitely get some practice with this. If put is feeling off-putting, no pun intended, take your time with it. It is a little bit more tricky due to the amount of inputs it needs and just handling the logic of getting the ID and the update object to the appropriate function. But definitely implement this, get some practice with it, and when you're ready, let's move forward.